Hello and welcome to Biofilm podcast. My name is Pavel Ryzhov. Thank you so very much for joining me for this episode, the first episode of 2023. I would like to start by thanking everybody who recently subscribed to my channel. I really appreciate your support. I hope you are going to stick around, like the content. I've started uploading quite a few short videos, and this is one of the long-form videos, things that I'd like to do this year. And for everybody who recently joined, I'd like to describe a little bit of history of Biofilm podcast. It didn't start today. It started, in fact, in 2020. I want to give a brief history of what it was, what was the inspiration to start it, why I took a significant break, I suppose, from doing that, and where I hope to take this channel, this podcast in particular, next. Obviously, I have a very specific topic that I'd like to discuss on this episode, but more on that in just a moment. So again, my name is Pavel. I'm originally from Russia. I'm now working as a field application scientist in biotechnology industry. I've been doing this for several years now. I really enjoy what I do. Basically, what I do is work in technical sales in biotech, helping sell instrumentation for life science research. And before all of this, before I got to the place where I'm at, I graduated with my PhD in February 2020, so right before pandemic started. And obviously, that's when no jobs were available. So my idea for Biofilm podcast really was born out of, I suppose, having not much to do, but also genuine enthusiasm and curiosity around what jobs are out there. Because when I graduated, I had very little knowledge around the industry, the life science industry that I wanted to join, career options, and so on. So I really wanted to understand the world I'm getting in. I had some interesting people that I wanted to talk about, to talk about their life, what drew them to life sciences. So my first iteration over the course of 2020 was several episodes interviewing professionals in life science industry, which was super interesting. I interviewed professors, entrepreneurs, scientists, some of my friends as well. This was super awesome, and I really enjoyed every single episode. And I wanted to say thank you to everybody who took time to speak with me that last year at that iteration. This was eye-opening in many ways and fun in all the others. Obviously, once I actually got the job, I took a significant break. I wanted to focus on being the best employee I could, really understand what I do so I can add value to everybody and my company. And obviously, this was a very prolonged hiatus, and I didn't really return to doing those podcasts for a very long time, as well as YouTube videos at large. I think what my hope is, and my goal more than the hope, is to really bring back the energy and enthusiasm that I had for speaking to others, but also just genuinely sharing my enthusiasm for life sciences. Because here's the thing, I've always liked sciences, and now I've come to realization that I think just anybody should come along for the ride. Everybody should be in life sciences. I mean, why not? We need all the people we can get. There's plenty of rewarding careers out there for anybody who might be looking, for students especially, if you guys are still wondering what you should be. That's why I started making those short videos around the tips and tricks and hacks and whatnot that I found along the way that helped me understand what my career options are in life sciences and how to discover them correctly and so on. So I think my goal for this podcast is, again, to share this enthusiasm for life sciences, educate science students, educate really general public as well about the benefits of being in life sciences, some of the problems that we might still have that are yet to be unsolved, but also the opportunities that are out there to make a meaningful impact on our overall quality of life. So I want to interview others. I definitely would like to share some of my opinions, what I've learned along the way. I definitely discovered that since I graduated, there was quite a few interesting revelations I've had about the life science industry, what my place in it is or will be eventually, as well as how it works, how it truly works. I'm an active participant in this process, albeit from a very specific angle. I see how life sciences is developing, where things are maybe slowing down, where things are picking back up. And all of this I want to share. But I think in this episode, I'd like to focus on just a few of those things and save the rest for future installments of what I hope to be a more stronger iteration of Biofilm podcast. Just I guess for long-time listeners, if any of you are out there, Biofilm podcast was originally an idea. The name was just a merger of biology and films. I do like watching movies and TV shows. Some of them I rewatch very religiously. So it's not the biofilm from bacteria. It's more like bio and film. And what I used to do is ask my guests is if there was any movie recommendations that they recently watched that they would like to share with the audience. All right, with this out of the way, let's get into the meat and potatoes, which is, since I'm Russian, these are the two things I like, of this particular episode. The topic of today's episode has to do with abundance of knowledge. So let me, I guess, lay the groundwork for why I think this particular conversation is important, and I think it's a great thing to start off this series of Biofilm podcast episodes. So abundance of knowledge in 2023, we probably have a good sense of why this is an interesting thing to unpack, because we all familiar with just how much information there is out there that we're constantly getting bombarded with, that we need to process, that we need to understand. And in sciences, I feel it's very much the same way. There's always papers being published, there's always new technologies emerging, there's new discoveries being made, there's new medicines that go on the market. And I think you might start to see where I'm trying to go with that, but what do we do with that abundance of knowledge? Because that breeds abundance of choices, right? We imagine going to a supermarket and you have 500 different assortments of apples. I'm like, I don't know which ones to pick. I think I like green, right? When you have too many choices, you start to question your understanding of the entire field. You start to question whether you start to second guess yourself. And oftentimes than not, you tend to make the wrong decision about what you need to focus on, what you need to pick. And I think before going into the negatives, let's start with positives. Life science research over the last half a century, really, if not more, greatly benefited from advances in technology, advances in information availability, as well as the rapid dissemination of both of the technology that's being very quickly adopted and of information, of all the countless research papers, as well as just general understanding of how life sciences work, how our bodies work, how the world around us works. Obviously, I'm going to be talking more heavily in the biotech and pharma world, but it's true across life science research industry in general. There is great benefits and that stem from the use of technology, from the use of this rapidly available information. And of course, this again culminates in very advanced technologies being used to find new drugs, new medicines. And one of the, I guess, chief advances, if you will, that really you could say exemplifies this is COVID-19 vaccine. So because this was such a novel technology, the mRNA technology, it built on the years and years of R&D, but also rapidly being able to rapidly advance towards the clinic through the availability of the information about the COVID genome, about the technology that was available to manufacture this kind of vaccine, and so on. So this is, I guess, now becomes a classic example of the benefits of life science technology. But I think what I'd like to focus on specifically in this episode is what I would consider is more of a negative side effects, if you will, of this abundance of technology and information and so on. In fact, I go so far as to say now life science is impacted by the overabundance of those things, overabundance of technology, overabundance of information. And what I think is even more critical, and what this leads to, is actually, instead of rapid dissemination of technology and information, I think now the overabundance leads to slower dissemination of both of them. And let me, I guess, rephrase it in this way. The problem that I find with this overabundance of technology, overabundance of information, is there's just way too many choices that researchers have. And I'd like to focus on researchers because obviously researchers are the ones investigating, discovering new science, pushing it to new frontiers. And when they are faced with situations when they have competing technologies, sometimes multiple versions of the same instrument or reagent or something like that, when they have literally no intimate knowledge because there's just way too many options available for any given thing, what can that sort of lead to? As I mentioned, it just makes them make decisions based on something that is not actual insight. It's just like, oh, I just want to make a decision. I cannot wait to go through all of these options, and I'll just pick whichever one I think is correct. And again, like I'm thinking, okay, if I go to a supermarket and pick an apple, and again there is like 50 different versions of an apple that I'd like, which one would I go with? I mean, I don't know. I'm not an apple grower, I'm not a farmer. I don't know much about their tastes and so on. I just read the labels and so on. I just pick the one that looks nice. So guess what? When a researcher makes a decision about buying this machine or that machine among 10 other machines that are virtually doing the same thing, well, guess what? They're not necessarily making a right decision. What that leads to is also overabundance of resources that go into discovery and innovation of things that probably should not be innovated, that should be just sort of consolidated in some ways. But I'll get back to that specific point in just a second. So I think with a lot of information and a lot of technology, one of the problem is lack of transparency, right? We now start seeing that when there is also slow dissemination of all of this information because there's just too much of it, the transparency is a big problem, because now where do we get access to the latest research paper or the latest information on this new device that just came from this instrument manufacturer? And the problem of solving the transparency, which is in many ways a lot of advocates for open science really go after the transparency problem. It's great and all, but actually when there is too much information to begin with, how to focus is becoming much more of an issue than just the availability of information. Let's say I had all the information in the world around 50 different sorts of apples. Does that still mean I'm going to go through all of that information intelligently and make an intelligent choice? Probably not. There is always a lack of time. So focusing becomes much bigger piece of the puzzle, if you will. And focusing resources across the industry, across disciplines, across different kinds of problems that scientists collectively tackle is much more of a problem now than a lack of transparency or the slow dissemination of that information. Okay, so now that I've explained the problem, let me, I guess, set the stage for what possible solution might be. And that sort of brings it more into the current events. So science and research and life science industry does not exist in vacuum. That's one of the things I really want to make sure it comes across, specifically for younger students who are thinking about life sciences as a career option. Science is not a job. Science does not exist in a vacuum. What I mean by that is there's other things that go into life science industry. There is money, there is politics, there is people interacting with one another. There is all kinds of other things that are very important for sciences to be successful, for that sector to be successful. And what we see this year specifically, and that started really last year, is layoffs. Layoffs had a huge impact on our perception of the success of the entire life science industry sector, because what we see is the reduction in force, the reduction in spending, the reduction across various levels of organization for many companies. What people seem to be missing is that leaner approach, leaner companies would likely be more sustainable long term. And that's my honest belief. Like, I know it's very sad to say that people lost jobs, and I totally sympathize with all of that. But I feel like we should put it into context, because it's not just about a person doing science at the bench. Again, we do not exist in a vacuum in this industry. There is inflation, there is politics, there is a lot of things that sort of led to the layoffs happening the way that they did. It may have been through the overabundance. Overabundance wasn't just in technology and information, actually. It was also overabundance of money and venture capital that was available for investment into biotech, right? And investment into these companies. So going back to the problem with this overabundance is that the solution that companies came up with is that leaner, meaner biotech, if you will, is likely just a more sustainable business model. So paring down on the number of options that you have available, from the headcount, from the availability of cash, from the availability of resources in general, is likely better, because that allows companies to make better decisions, because they have less to work with. Less to work with is not bad. It makes you want to be smarter about what you have. For example, I'm not recording this on a fancy camera. I'm just recording it on my iPhone. I don't have a $300 microphone. I'm just using a $20 mic that I got, right? So bottom line is, what the industry needs in this case is we need to be more judicial with what science needs to be supported. And that comes with reduction in headcount, reduction on those resources. And that means, on the flip side to that, is management of these companies just thinking that they want to put money where it will have the most amount of impact. That means cutting down on some more risky and less promising disease indications in case of pharma companies, right? When they're thinking, oh, this drug is likely not going to succeed, and why that is the case, it's like a whole other conversation. But they just want to hedge their bets, they want to reduce their risks and just do better with the money that they have. And that sort of concept of limiting resources is, I think, is healthy in many ways, especially in long term. So this brings me to a solution of the problem. And I'm not going to make this episode overly long. I'd just like to get sort of straight to the point. And solution is this. First of all, if I knew what was best in cases like this, when there is overabundance, I would probably have my own company. I would probably know what to do already. Obviously, I don't. But I have a few guesses which I hope that are at least somewhat educated based on the books that I've been reading, the news I've been watching, and so on. So there's one thing that I would like to propose, and that's a very radical thought that some might consider, and that is this: consolidation around manufacturing of hardware tools, software tools is super critical for solving this problem of slower dissemination of technology and information. Again, if you have so many different options as a researcher to choose from software and hardware and so on, and there is no clear winner that you'd be like, okay, this is the Apple of, I don't know, mass spectrometers or whatever, right? How are you going to make an informed decision? How are you going to really know that you have the best of the best and not worry about it? Not about, all the other options that are available out there. So consolidating this around key players in the industry is likely going to benefit the life science industry as a whole. And with that consolidation, I think the development of the unifying ecosystem, kind of like an operating system for smartphones, like an Android or an Apple, is probably also going to be super critical. Because again, from when I've done bench science, and still it's very much true, because there's too many options how to do science, there's not a unique, powerful ecosystem that, let's say, vast majority of scientists are operating under. And that means the cross dissemination of information, adoption of parallel technology platforms, it just leads to this bloat and, again, slower, more, just worse dissemination of technological know-how, the discoveries, and so on. It leads to mistakes, it leads to failures, it leads to, eventually, what we should not forget, it leads to higher and higher prices of drugs with patients. So a lot of this, what I'm describing, is actually has very tangible benefit on our own lives as people, as humans, because if we don't solve those issues in life sciences now, they are going to reverberate across the other industries, across pharmaceutical development, drug development, and so many others, and it is going to come back to us. And that's why, again, I think that some version of consolidation and ecosystem development is super critical for reducing the costs, reducing that complexity that now have been introduced over the last several decades. So this has been kind of a short introduction into what Biofilm Podcast is all about. This was a very interesting topic that I wanted to chat about for quite a long time. I hope you found it very interesting. Again, thank you so very much for subscribing to my channel, for watching this video, or listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please comment, let me know why you joined my channel, what information you'd like to get out of it, what kind of videos you found the most interesting thus far. I know I've posted quite a few. What would you like to see me talk about? And most importantly, do you work in life sciences? Do you need help joining life sciences? And do you think you might find a rewarding career in life sciences? Because that's my ultimate mission, I think, with this channel and in general, is to be able to help anybody find success, to find a rewarding career in this very exciting industry that is very near and dear to my heart. So thank you so very much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in many other Biofilm podcast episodes, as well as other videos that I'm going to be doing on this channel. Thank you so much. Best of luck. Bye-bye.